Hey Tallwood, my name is Alana,
My name's Kaylee.
and we're English students from Mr. Denver's dual enrollment English class, and we're here with a podcast for the Roaring Gazette.
We just discovered these buttons on the podcast thing, so it's fun.
Thank you so much for the round of applause, Kaylee.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
So on our podcast today, we're going to be talking about some literacy narratives. I'm going to read mine, and then Kaylee will read hers, and we'll talk about some similarities and differences that we had in our essays. My name's Alana, and this is my literacy narrative. Sitting in the back of my dad's old Nissan Altima, 6-year-old me looks out the window reading all of the signs I see as we drive by. Anything helps, I read off of a sign an older man was holding. That's great, Alana. Keep reading the other words you see, encouraged my dad. I continued to read what's on buildings and the street signs when suddenly I see a big golden arches I always loved. McDonald's! I yelled. That says McDonald's, I continued. My dad laughed from the front seat while saying, That doesn't count. You already know the logo, Alana. When I look back at my first memory of me reading, I laugh. It's such a silly memory of mine that always comes back when I pass that specific McDonald's I went to as a young child. Kindergarten me continued to read everything I saw, even if I was pronouncing it terribly. I continued to read signs while in the car with my parents, attempted to read my older cousin's books, and even asked my parents to write words for me to read. Mommy, write down words and I will sound them out, I say to my mom. I would always do it. She started off with simple words and eventually made them more difficult. I eventually failed once they got harder, but that didn't matter because I loved to read. Later on in elementary school, I became invested in the Junie B. Jones series when my aunt gifted me an entire set of the books. Sure, they were old and water damaged and had slight mildew smell, but that didn't stop me. I was invested. I would tell my teachers my head hurt so I could sit in the classroom library and read instead of doing class lessons. I know it sounds bad, but it's what I love to do. I just wanted to read. A lady I'd never seen before with short, curly blonde hair entered my second grade teacher's classroom and asked, Alana, can you come with me to my classroom for a minute? I stood up from my desk with my legs shaking and a pit in my stomach. I slowly walked out of the classroom as the rest of the classroom oohed as if I had gotten in trouble. What did I do? Where is she taking me? Who is this? Am I in trouble? Is everything okay? Are all questions I thought to myself as she led me to the secret classroom. She opens the door and reveals a room that looked like a classroom. It looked like an office, and a playroom had a baby. There was one semicircle table with chairs and a shelf of board games I'd never seen, and oh my goodness, so many books. I continued to take in my surroundings when she told me to take a seat. My name is Miss Reed. You're not in trouble. I'm just pulling you aside because your teachers have noticed your reading skills, she explained. Still nervous, being in a new place, I just sat there and nodded slowly. You know that big test you took a few weeks ago and it had all the questions? Yeah, I remember that. So I got your results, and they tell me your reading level is very high for a second grader. According to the test, you're actually at an eighth grade reading level. I was so shocked to find this out. I always knew I enjoyed reading and did okay with it, but I would have never thought I was at a high school level. I was so excited to go home and tell my parents. This new lady, Miss Reed, explained to me that I would be pulled out of class with some other students like me and read books and do activities that matched our reading level. And the next week it started. From second grade until I left that school, I read in the blonde haired lady's classroom every week. I got to read great stories and build connections with like minded students. I will forever be grateful for the opportunity to do this because I know I couldn't get things like this. Fifth grade, the downfall of it all. Fifth grade, I no longer went to the small private school that I had known most of my life. In fifth grade, I started public school. It wasn't that bad, but it was just different. Too different. Fifth grade was the year we read a book called Hatchet, and this wouldn't be an issue had I not read it in third grade with Miss Reed. I was so upset we had to read this book again. Was it a great book? Of course it was. But did I want to read it again? Absolutely not. Please let me go back to my old school. I can't read this book again. It's like so third grade. I cried to my mom. My mom chuckled and told me I need to push through it and not just give up. So that's what I did. I pushed through it. I hated every second of it, but eventually it was done. The young girl that loved reading, wanted nothing else, suddenly never wanted to read ever again. I stopped reading for pleasure and now only read when it's needed. Family members would still gift me books and ask about the current books I was reading. I'll tell them a random book and create a random storyline to go along with it. I despised reading. When I reflect on why I stopped, it really is stupid, and I wish it was never the case. I wish I still read books and challenged my brain. I wish I'd stayed the young girl who wanted to read everything and learn new words. I wish I was able to stick with it because now it's hard to get back into. Not being into reading anymore makes me feel less. Everyone has their thing and something they are known to do. Mine was reading, and I don't have that anymore. Bye. Okay, and now my friend Kaylee is gonna read
I felt like I was listening to an audiobook.
her
So cool.
narrative. How many pages is yours?
Mine is 4 pages.
Mine was 4 pages too. Okay. Buckle up for another 5 minutes of reading.
I don't think I fully read through this, so we're gonna see. Okay. All right. Kaylee, please stand and read paragraph 5. I froze. My hands began to shake. I knew I had to face this, so I mustered the little courage I had left and took a deep breath and stood up. When I looked at the black text in fine print and began to read, the words seemed to jump ahead of what I was reading. It was as if there was a race between the words on the page and the words leaving my mouth. The page read, "The dog walked down the road and saw a squirrel and began to run." However, what left my mouth was very different. The walk down dog the road and saw a squirrel and run began too. I began to lose focus and felt as if all eyes were on me, glaring with judgment. My hands, still shaking, began to sweat. I could feel my face turning a red that a tomato couldn't even compare to. I quickly scattered out words that I hoped would resemble the paragraph and immediately dropped down and sank into my seat. I was first taught to read at Barefoot Kids, a kindergarten not far from where I lived. I never recalled ever struggling to pick up words or having difficulty with pronunciation. I rather excelled in classes with spelling, cursive, and writing sentences. My parents always praised me for my success and ability to get ahead and even applied for me to attend a gifted school. My insecurities first began while attending this school. My first few years of elementary school were amazing, where I met wonderful teachers and lasting friendships. I felt that I had found a place where I could fit in and also be challenged. Everything seemed to be going great until I entered 4th grade. Each year, students were required to take a reading inquiry test, which consists of multiple choice questions following a short passage from fiction to nonfiction texts. By the end of the test, each student is given a score for each grade level. There's a certain score that is needed to progress. Unfortunately for me, I scored well below what was required for my age, which forced me to be placed in an assisted reading class. I was devastated and heartbroken that while all my friends in class got to read novels and participate in discussions and projects, I would have to be confined to a small room completing word sorts and tasks that I thought were meant for kids well below my age level. However, the outcome of this was entirely different because of one teacher, Miss Karalavanos. Miss Karalavanos, or Miss C for short, was a tiny lady who had this high-pitched, squeaky little voice that I thought at first would be very annoying to me. What I expected walking into this class was to be treated as less than the other kids and to be scolded for my inability to read. But Miss C treated me with kindness and introduced me to a higher level vocabulary than I had ever had before. She showed me the joy behind reading, and that I didn't have to be a chore to complete. The class went by in a flash, and when it concluded, I felt a sense of accomplishment for the long way I had come for barely being able to put a sentence together to writing elaborately crafted sentences. All of my struggles with reading seemed to disappear until middle school. By middle school, I was reading all kinds of books on my own. My dad would take me to the library every Saturday to check out the newest arrivals. Over the summer, I almost knocked over my coffee. Over the summer, I completed the reading challenges that the local library would host. Everything seemed perfect. I believed I had overcome the trial of reading, but there was always one thing I struggled with: reading aloud. No matter how much I practiced, whether that was with my parents in class or my church, I still had this race with the words in my mind that I would always end up last in. I felt as if I was being punched and beaten down every time a teacher would call on me to read, or if I had to read a passage in groups, or if I had to read a passage in groups. I got to the point where I wondered if it would always be this way. I questioned whether or not I could overcome this disadvantage of mine. I was so insecure and unsure of myself and began to completely shut down. By the end of middle school, I struggled with even speaking aloud. An anxiety formed around every conversation that I would have with someone. When the global pandemic, COVID-19, shut down the world, it took an even worse toll. I was completely disconnected from everyone, including myself. I'd hide myself behind the screen so that people could only see me as a black square with Kaylee F. Harity spread across it. Time seemed to fly by during this period, and all of a sudden, I was no longer a middle schooler. The days of high school were upon me. I began to reflect on the last few years and came to the realization that I didn't want it to be like this.
I told
I
myself
wanted to live out my high school years to the fullest, and I could be whatever I wanted. So that's exactly what I did. I made myself into the person I wanted to be. Not long into my first year of high school, I decided to get involved. I joined different honor societies, sports, and most importantly, SEA. SEA is a student council association, or most recognizably, the student government. At first, I wasn't very interested in the club, but at the first meeting, the class president stood up and gave a speech welcoming everyone. I was stunned. It was beautiful. The way her words seemed to flow perfectly together, and she was confident in every word she spoke. From that moment on, I knew that's exactly what I wanted to be like. I invested more and more time into SEA and grew a close bond with the advisor of the club, Miss Clauser. When I first met Miss Clauser, I thought she was a little odd, especially her obsession with cats and European history. I expressed to her my interest in getting involved and how I admired the speeches that the students gave. It took no time at all for her to gift me the opportunity to begin practicing these skills. When I first stood up and gave a speech, it was the induction ceremony, where I inducted the next officers for the upcoming year. As I stood up on the stage and stared down at those tiny little letters on the page, I began to panic. It was happening all over again. The words sprinted out, dodging my eyes so I couldn't read. I tried to calm myself, but it was no use. I completely messed up. After that After that catastrophe, Miss Clauser still allowed me to speak. I figured she knew I wanted to learn how to be confident in my speaking and reading aloud, so she gave me more experience to grow. So I tried again, this time at the SEA or at the citywide event where I could welcome the new students to the meeting. I made sure I was extra prepared this time, having read the speech well over 20 times aloud. However, I ran into the same problem. But this time I tried something different, something I had never done before, to improv. I wondered if I took away the reading portion and focused more on what I was saying, I could more properly communicate to my audience. And I was right. I began to speak, and all the nervousness went away. My hands stopped shaking, and for the first time, I felt comfortable. I was speaking in front of a large crowd, and I was comfortable. I quickly came to realize that I didn't necessarily need to be good at reading aloud, and still struggle from time to time. But I have a new strength, public speaking. I have a new strength. Public speaking allowed me to communicate and be myself without racing the words or drowning in the text on the paper. Okay. Okay, so we just finished reading, and now we're gonna talk about like the similarities and differences.
Okay, so I'll start.
I really do not like having an audience.
One of our like similarities, we both talked about reading and how it was either a struggle for us or if it was really like our strong suits.
Yeah, we both talked about funny enough, we both talked about the reading inventory and how Alana, you obviously scored higher than I did.
Where's the laughing one?
You scored higher than I did, and I scored pretty low. But like we both had different like learning experiences from that. So, yeah.
Yeah, even though like one of us struggled and one of us like didn't so much, we still like have a story to tell out of it, and we find it very important in our like our reading lives.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh. Yeah. And then Also, like yours is a little more catered towards like reading, while mine, like you found your strong suit in reading, while mine was more like I made it more public speaking over reading because I still struggle with reading. I don't know if you heard that recording. Still struggle, but yeah, like I've found like public speaking is like, I guess like improv is like better for me to than reading. Okay, and then another thing we need to talk about is like what are we taking back from like Tallwood, or like what are we contributing to Tallwood with like our little learning experiences. So so for me, I definitely think that Tallwood lacks like public speaking classes or an emphasis on public speaking, and I feel like I can speak for a lot of people when I say like when we're doing presentations and stuff, like a lot of us lack the public speaking skills like needed to present. um, and yeah, because like you can take online classes in public speaking, but it's not like really helpful. So
Didn't there used to be a public speaking class, but like it's kind of just not like a thing anymore?
yeah, I mean, there's drama now, but
Yeah.
not many people,
I
I guess,
think
sign up for it.
I think like if we don't have like public speaking classes, it could definitely be like just a small little unit in like one of our core classes that gives us like tricks and tools and like just helpful stuff
Yeah,
to make public speaking a little bit easier.
I agree. And also, like, public speaking isn't like a once and done thing. Like, it takes time to practice, and like the more you do it, the more better you get at it.
Yeah,
Sure.
of course.
Okay, so what did you like take away from your essay?
Um
One thing.
Okay, tell me what you took away and I'll say my
yeah.
takeaway.
So, I'm I'm like a library helper for the library. So I see a lot of kids, like I get to check out their books and stuff, and I notice like a lot of kids will like they tend to read more mangas than actual books. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with mangas.
We need to start reading
But-
for real.
There's definitely a need for more like reading, like in-depth reading.
Yeah, I agree. Like, like growing up, we read a lot of like the like Dork Diaries, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, like all of those short ones that didn't have much like content to it. I feel like that's where not it didn't go wrong for a lot of students, but like I feel like starting to read more developed books at a young age would help like high school readers
For sure.
reading.
And I also think like I honestly in high school I don't think I read a full book until like junior senior year. So also like pushing to read more books in our English classes because I feel like it kind of like fell off. I don't know if that was COVID or
Yes. I used to read so much and then like I fell off, but then I like started to try and get back onto it. And reading is such like a fun, good hobby, and I
really
think
is.
people need to
literally
pick
like
up some more books.
it snowed this weekend and I just spent my day reading. I was like, you know what? It's cold out. I'm gonna read a book.
Reading is really peaceful, especially like if you find a book that you're actually interested in and not a book that you're just being forced to read because of like your English class or whatever. Like find a book that you're actually interested in
True.
and read it. And it's really fun. You'll get a lot of you'll learn a lot of new words. Like I love learning new Yes, like new word. Like I love having to open the dictionary and figure out what that word
Like,
meant.
what does that even mean?
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right. All right. Anyways, we got a line to use this little podcast station.
Now, on top of our audience.
Yeah. I hope this is good enough,
Yeah.
Mr. Denver.
So we're gonna wrap it up here. Okay. Thank you. Oh, that's the wrong one. Wait, where's the little outro?
And that's it. And we'll see you next week. Tallwood Roaring Gazette. We love you.
Bye.